Hello everybody, Ben here again for another chapter of Walking on Cinders, and we are going to this time read chapter 8. This is my book Walking on Cinders, which, as you'll know if you've been listening to the stream at all, is 10 years old this year. You can listen to all the videos, you can watch them all back again, they're all on my website, which is atkinsonben.co.uk. Posted one on Instagram as well today, so do check that out. And if you happen to be looking for something else to do tonight, then you can check out the National Theatre, because they're broadcasting theatre shows every Thursday evening, and that's going to be really good. So tune into that if you're interested in theatre like I am. That's what I'm going to be doing this evening, and that's really very good. So chapter 8 then of Walking on Cinders. Here we go. Clouds floated past the windows like balls of candy floss, weightless in the wide expanse of the blue. The fields and farmland far below were knitted tightly together in large patchwork quilts that covered the land in every direction. Now they were up in the sky, the jet began to make steady progress towards their destination. Already they had passed over the English Channel, and far below they had noticed the large cargo ships docking at Dover and the small passenger ferries tripping across the waves from Portsmouth towards the Isle of Wight. Before long they had reached the shores of France. France was a changed country, that much was obvious. Close to the coast, the farmland had disappeared, making way for the many industrial cities that had grown up since the war had begun. Here was the centre of the country's ammunition production, with mile after mile of grey urban expanse. As they travelled further inland, nature appeared to regain her grasp, as yet unaffected by the advancing industrialisation. In the cabin, tiredness and confusion had taken hold. Each knew that there was little less than an hour of their journey left, and each in turn resisted the opportunity to make conversation. It had begun the moment Jennifer stepped inside the jet and took her seat in the furthest corner of the already cramped compartment. She could sense the atmosphere from the outset and dared not utter a word in greeting until the soldiers had dealt with whatever pride or fear that plagued them. It was just as the jet had crossed the border between land and sea that Thomas Fisher dropped his line of sight from the window ledge and turned to the others. He noticed Chris and a look of disgust on his face. Perhaps his friend was concerned their mission would not turn out to be the great success he had hoped. Turning to the left, Thomas now broke Ewan's line of sight. His friend showed little or no acknowledgement. He didn't even notice the slight smile of amusement that appeared on Thomas's face as he took a few steps forward, drew back the sliding door, and headed towards the cockpit to communicate with their navigator. "What on earth do you think's got into him?" Chris asked a few moments later in the icy atmosphere. "I don't really know," Ewan replied, suddenly snapping out of his trance. "Hasn't he always been like that?" "I'm not so sure. I think there's something going on in here, and if we're going to see the other side of this impending battle, then we must at least work together." Chris had made his point and so turned away to consult their briefing documents. A flicker of panic appeared across his face for a single moment, but no one was close enough to observe it. For the first time since their journey had begun, Ewan Roberts plucked up the courage to address the girl sat opposite him. Jennifer, who could have been flattered by such admiration, returned his look. "Why so quiet, sunshine?" she smiled, momentarily forgetting that Chris was there. "Well, you haven't spoken a word to me since we left London, and it can't be that long now till we arrive." The soldier paused for a moment, perhaps contemplating an answer, or at least going through the motions in his head. "It just doesn't feel right," he pondered at last. "You being here after everything that happened last night. These trips are usually just for us lads, you know. Chris as the leader, all boys together, and well, it's going to be dangerous, and hell, we might not even make it back. This is serious, Jennifer." It was as if the thoughts that had been swirling around in his head like a whirlpool in some far ocean escaped from his lips all at once, a river of thoughts, worries and feelings hurtling outwards. "Look, Ewan," Jennifer started again, this time bringing Chris into the equation, so that he turned and looked at them both. "We all know what's going to happen in the end. We're here for one reason. You are here for one reason. The things that we do and the decisions we make over the next few days, weeks and months will affect our country for years to come. And like you said, it's Chris who's going to lead us all the way." "Yes, I will," Chris stuttered, surprised at how this woman was taking control. "We know he will, or at least we hope. We need something to keep the faith. But for now, all we can do is enjoy what we have here and enjoy it soon before it all changes." Jennifer was proud of herself. All of her life she had wanted to say this All of her life she had wanted to be this way, standing up for her beliefs, but Miss Marmalade had always prohibited it, stopped it stone cold dead. And perhaps through coincidence, or through the mysteries of fate, it was at that moment that the sliding door drew back and Thomas returned to the compartment again, totally oblivious to any of the previous conversation. "I've just spoken to the navigator," he began, addressing the others with a flourish of his hand. "He says that providing we can find a suitable landing position, we can touch down within half an hour. Now that's got to be good news, so let's stop this moping about. If we are ever going to work together on this, we need to be confident with each other. What we need is for something exciting to happen, something to get the blood pumping." It was the most that Thomas Fisher had said throughout the whole journey, and indeed the last that any of them would say for some time. With a sudden lurch of its engine, the jet plane began to move with such tremendous force that the passengers were thrown back against the metal wall of the compartment. Far below, the little patch of sky which they had made their own, the mismatched hills and valleys of rural Auvergne stretched out before them, a small piece in the giant jigsaw of the puzzle that was United Europe. Here and there the odd oak tree or an old decrepit barn long since forgotten pierced the expanse of green and yellow. It was another lurch of the engine and a rotation of almost 90 degrees that prompted the vessel to lose altitude and turn in a nosedive towards the fields below. The pilot and the navigator fumbled frantically with an array of buttons and controls, but there was nothing that they could do. In the cabin, fear and panic ensued. Each of the friends searched frantically for any kind of protection as they hurtled ever downwards to meet the earth below. Time seemed to slow. The ever-turning loops of the small transport jet, a confused bumblebee in the state of disarray, passed like the simple spins of a roundabout, and when dizziness and nausea set in, it was hard to remember anything at all. Several things happened in the moments between falling and making impact with the ground. Chris, who had flown before and who had experienced danger, even at his young age, realised immediately that something was wrong. It did, however, take his mind a few moments to process the information, and when he did, his face, now void of all expression, turned a palish shade of white. There was a moment, although it passed without notice, when Jennifer knocked her head against the very roof of what was destined to be their tin can coffin. It was only a minor bump, something that Jennifer herself didn't even notice at first, yet it was just seconds later that her eyes closed and she gave in to unconsciousness. Her last thoughts were that she might never awaken again. For Thomas and Ewan, the situation scared them greatly. From the moment they felt that first lurch, they had retreated to the very furthest reaches of their minds to attain some state of tranquillity where they could perhaps reside until the inevitable happened. And so those few seconds sealed each of their fates in turn. If you had looked upwards, you might have been surprised to see a United jet plane moving with such speed across the sky, for Army transport had always been very reliable. Now all this had changed, and the evidence was that one lone vessel, making its way towards the mountains of the rural Auvergne, had landed in a crumpled heap amongst the cornfields. It bounced slightly on impact, tumbling over the crumbling earth. It was getting late now, and the jet plane should have arrived safely at its destination over an hour ago. Soon others would notice that they had not arrived, firstly checking the radio signals before beginning to search, but whether it would be for bodies or for survivors, they had still to discover.